All right, there's a little video on orders of operations. Guys, hopefully, I know you guys have done orders of operations before, but I'm going to present it in a just slightly different way than what you guys have talked about before. I think this is something that's misunderstood once you guys start using calculators, you forget about those orders of operations, and so that's what we're looking at today, is to be able to do that by hand and honestly with a calculator as well is my hope as well with that. So, all right. So really quick, if I look at this, what would be our answer to this if you looked at that? And if you want to just take a second and do that really quick on your own, you could get varying different answers depending on what you do. Like honestly, if you add here and then divide and then you see this is multiplying and then subtracting, you get something different compared to if you want to subtract and then divide. You can get a lot of different answers based on what you're trying to get accomplished here for this. And so on this one, you should actually do this division first, and you're going to get 2 there, and then you're going to multiply it to here and get 4. And then we've got the 10 here and the 1 here, and so you'd have 14 minus 1, which you should have gotten 13 from that one. But if you do it in a different order, then you're going to get something different, okay? You guys have probably heard this before. I personally am not a big fan of this because students just don't understand what's going on. They know that they've heard their teacher say, please excuse my freaking dear Aunt Sally 500 times, but I don't know. And I know that's what these all represent. That's what you guys have probably heard before. But what I want you to do is please understand what's going on, the mathematical meaning behind that, okay? Sorry for that last slide. That's probably, I don't know, probably should have. Anyway, I don't get so caught up on mnemonics of please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Just get rid of that. What I want you to do is understand what's going on here, okay? So this is a little bit different way. So what I want you to understand is there's really 4 basic operations, guys. Parentheses is not an operation, and neither are exponents, okay? Really our 4 operations are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And these are what we need to do. So there's 3 things that we need to consistently look at. Remember, multiplication and division are performed before addition, subtraction. And I say multiplication and division together because they come together. It's not another thing with please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. People think you have to multiply before you divide no matter what. Well, that's just not true, guys. You do those together and you work left to right. So if you see number 2, it says all operations are performed left to right. And then multiplication occurs simultaneously with division, and addition occurs simultaneously with subtraction. So if I look at this expression right here, I have this division side, and then remember this is multiplication here. So I'm going to work left to right. So I would divide before I multiply here. And then once I've done that, then I will do my addition and then subtraction because I'm going to work left to right. Okay? Addition, subtraction, you just need to do those simultaneously, really. But when you see multiplication, division, you have to work left to right. So that's why we're going to divide this first, then multiply it, and then go 10 plus that, and then minus 1. Okay? Here's, again, if I do that, follow that right here. If I look at this first one here, and you guys can follow along. This one's nice because I've got a subtraction, multiplication, addition. So I know I'm going to do my multiplication first. That'll give me 12. And I just drop everything else down. A lot of you guys just do this in your head. And now I have addition and subtraction together. I would just work left to right. So 12 minus 12 is 0. Plus 3 will give me 3. And that would be my final thing here. So this one I've got a lot of multiplication and division. Again, just work left to right, guys. Work left to right. So I'm going to work this first one first, 12 times 6. That's going to be my first one. That's just going to give me 72, okay? And then I have the divide 3 times 2, divide by 8. So you should be looking and saying, what am I going to do next? That next one's going to be my division because that's the first thing left, and all I have is division multiplication. So I'm going to go 72 divided by 3, which is going to give me 24. And then I have the times 2, and then divide by 8. So next I'm going to times by 2. So when I times that by 2, I get 48. And then I've got divide by 8, which is going to give me 6. Again, if you don't work left to right, you're going to get something different, okay? And so for mathematics to work, we have to have these orders of operations. Okay, this next one we've got division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction, everything in here. So I say, okay, I've got all 4 of my basic operations. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at multiplication, division. And because I have both of them, I'm going to work left to right. So this division comes before the multiplication. So I'm going to do this divide first. So that'll give me 4. And then I've got the times 2, so I'll get that done, and that'll give me 8. And I'm just going to copy everything else down. And then I've got subtraction and addition. I just work left to right for this one as well. So I'll go to 24 divided by 8, which will give me 16. And then I'm going to add the 3 to it, which will give me 19. Okay? You've got to work left to right simultaneous with those. Okay? That's the first thing. Okay? So please keep that in mind. So why is that important, guys? Understand that if you can get those 4 basic ones down, that's the most important. Once we start going into something like this, if I do this without a calculator right here, you guys are good enough that you guys are going to do this multiplication down here, which will give you 10 minus 1 over here. And then a lot of you guys understand, like, hey, I'm going to add this first because this fraction here, and it'll give me 18, and this will give me 9 down here, and then you guys will divide it and you'll get 2, which is absolutely what you should do. If you type this all in your calculator, though, like if you type 12 plus 6, and then you hit divide, because you know that fraction's the divide, by 2, parentheses 5, minus 1, and you type that all in there together, your calculator will give you 26. And the question is why is it doing that? Well, if you understand the orders of operations, you should understand why it's giving you 26. Because your calculator is going to do this division first, then the multiplication, then it's going to add, then it's going to subtract. Instead, we've got to take care of those separately, okay? So this is what we call a grouping symbol. And I always refer to, so instead of worrying about PEMDAS and all that garbage, I just say, hey, look for grouping symbols, okay? Grouping symbols are things that separate your calculations into different groups. The fraction is an example of one of those, okay? So what it's doing is it's separating a top group and a bottom group, and we call those groups numerators and denominators, which you guys have learned before, okay? That's what it's doing. So we're looking for groupings in this case. And so the right and the correct way to do this is like what we did by hand. We have to take care of our numerator first, and then our denominator, and we do that. We do our 4 basic operation within the group, okay? So since the numerator only had addition, all I have to do is add. My denominator has this multiplication and then the subtraction, so that's why I multiplied 4 first before I subtracted. And then you take care of after you've done your grouping, okay? So parentheses is another common way of using a grouping symbol. I've introduced this last because, again, this is a big misunderstanding, guys. Parentheses can represent multiplication, but more often it's a grouping calculation. So if you look at this example, my parentheses is actually multiplication here, right? Because there's nothing but a 5 inside of that. Whereas if I look at this, I've got the 2 minus 4 inside my parentheses. That's a grouping. That's what I'm talking about. Most of the time when you see parentheses, it's just a group, okay? And so what that's telling me is that I have to do my 4 basic operations inside my parentheses before, okay? So I'm going to do, for this one, I'm going to do the 2 minus 4 to start with before I do any other calculations. Okay, just like here, I had to take care of my numerator grouping first and my denominator grouping first. The groupings, you've got to take care of your groups first, and it's just doing the 4 basic things in there. Okay? So if I look at this one, if you just compare this, again, if I'm going to do my groups here, I have to do my group for this one. So this will give me -2. And then I just copy down everything else. I've got a multiplication and addition. So I'm going to do my multiplication first because that's what my rules say is multiplication, division first. So I'll do that first, which will give me -16 when I times the -2 and the 8 together. Then I'm going to add the 2 and I get -14. Okay? If I don't have my grouping symbols, look what happens. So I look at this and I say, okay, I'm going to do my multiplication first. And so I go 4 times 8, which gives me 32. And then I'm going to subtract, which will give me -30. And then plus 2 more, which is going to give me -28. So I get something quite different when I don't have those groupings. Okay? That's why it's important to understand we do whatever our groupings are. And that's what those parentheses are actually meaning, is it's that group most of the time. Okay? Here's what it means for calculators, guys. If you're going to use our calculators are governed under the 4 basic operations. They're looking for multiplication, division, and then addition, subtraction. But our calculator, they don't automatically see the grouping symbols like we do. So they don't see the fraction. They don't know when to do what. So we actually have to tell it that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use parentheses to help our calculator tell when we see a grouping. So if I took this fraction here, how I'd use it in my calculator is I'd put these parentheses here around my numerator, and then I'd hit the divide for the fraction, and then a red parentheses, or it doesn't have to be red, but just set of parentheses around the 2, 5 minus 1. And that'll help my calculator tell it. Because it doesn't see it, we have to tell it when it is. So those parentheses help us tell our calculator where those groupings are. Okay? On your calculators, if you have any of these TIs, there's where your parentheses are right there. Okay? So if I look at this one, if I'm going to use, let me just do a couple of these by hand, and then we'll do one with the calculator as well. Okay? So this first one here, I see that I've got groups, guys. I've got the fraction that's a group, and then I've got my set of parentheses. So let's take care of my numerator first here. And if I was to do that, I'd take care of this grouping here, this 2 plus 7 first. That's going to give me 9 here. So that's gone. And then I have it timesing by 2 minusing 8. So you should say, hey, I'm going to do my timesing first. So 8 times 2 is 18. Okay? So that's going to give me 18. And then minus 8 is going to give me 10. So that's what my numerator should be done. And I take care of that grouping first. My denominator is nice because all I got to do is just, I just have to go ahead and add everything. So I go 10 plus 81, which gives me 91, plus 9, which gives me 100. Okay? And so then I can go ahead and divide those. And when I do that, that's just 1 over 10, which is going to give me 0.1 if you want it as a decimal. Okay? Okay, the second one, let's do with a calculator. If I do a calculator, I have to add parentheses here, and then I have to add parentheses here, and then instead of putting this fraction, I'm going to put the divide. So I just go parentheses 25 minus 16, end parentheses, then divide, parentheses. I know you gotta have 2 of them there, guys. Like you have to have 2 of them here because this one separates the fraction grouping from the other. Okay, and then minus 2. Plus 3 times 6, parenthesis, and you should get your answer 0.346 is what you get from this when you round it. As long as I did not mistype. Good. Yep. Okay. So 3, 4, 6, 1, 5. It just keeps going there. Okay. For this one, again, you use your parentheses here. Again, if we do this by hand, though, let's just do this by hand. I'd take care of my numerator first. So I'm going to go 9 times 4 first because multiplication comes before addition. I'm just looking at my numerator. That gives me 36. And I'm going to plus 2, which will give me 38. And then my denominator, here's my grouping symbol. So I'm going to do that first. This gives me 2. Even though the subtraction, remember, my grouping come before. I've got to take care of that. And then times 3. which that'll give me 6. And then I just go 38 divided by 6, which that's going to give me 6 1/3. So that'll give me 6.3 repeating over and over again. So, okay, so that's, so when you look at doing things with, again, orders operations, look for those groupings first. Once you're done with those, do the 4 operations within the groupings, and then go from there. If you ever have like an exponent, guys, like if you have a 5 to the 3rd, remember that is just multiplication. It's just repetitive multiplication, right? So this is really just 5 times 5 times 5, and you can just write it out like that if that helps you. If you have a grouping, so if you had like 4 minus 2 and then raised to the 2nd, that's 4 minus 2 twice, but what I would do is take care of what's inside of this first, which that just gives you 2, and then you have this squared, which again, that's just repetitive multiplication, so 2 times 2, which again is going to give you 4, okay? So write it out. Exponents are just multiplication, okay? All right, adios.